The Hidden Crimes of History's Greatest Inventors, High Voltage Sign, 1. Thomas Edison, the genius who electrocuted animals, is remembered as a brilliant inventor. The man who gave us the light bulb, the phonograph, and the motion picture. But Thomas Edison wasn't just a genius. He was a ruthless businessman. In the late 1800s, Edison became locked in a bitter rivalry with Nikola Tesla and George Westinghouse over which type of electricity would power the modern world. Edison backed direct current, DC. Tesla and Westinghouse promoted alternating current, AC, a system that was cheaper, more efficient, and ultimately better. Edison couldn't beat them with science. So he tried to beat them with fear. To scare the public, Edison launched a smear campaign against AC power. And he did it by electrocuting animals in public demonstrations: dogs, calves, horses. Even an elephant named Topsy. Each test ended the same, a live execution, filmed and distributed as propaganda. He called it science. But many called it cruelty. And behind the father of modern light was a man willing to kill in the name of business. Car, 2. Henry Ford, the tycoon who spread hate. He revolutionized industry. Perfected the assembly line. Put the world on wheels. But behind Henry Ford's success was a dark and dangerous ideology. In the 1920s, Ford didn't just build cars, he published a newspaper called the Dearborn Independent. And in its pages, he ran a series of articles that promoted anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. He blamed Jewish people for everything from economic downturns to moral decline, calling it the Jewish problem. These articles were later compiled into a book, The International Jew, a text that would go on to influence extremist movements around the world. One of its readers, Adolf Hitler. Hitler admired Ford so much, he mentioned him in Mein Kampf and kept a portrait of him in his office. Ford eventually apologized, decades later, but the damage was done. He may have changed how we move through the world. But he also helped spread one of its oldest hatreds. Telephone receiver, 3. Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor who tried to control who could reproduce. We know him as the man who invented the telephone. The voice that connected the world. But Alexander Graham Bell had another obsession when he rarely spoke into the public record. Eugenics? Bell believed that certain traits, especially deafness, were undesirable. He feared that allowing deaf people to marry each other would lead to a rise in deaf children. So he pushed for policies that would prevent them from doing so. In 1883, he gave a speech advocating for controlled breeding, and was later elected honorary president of the First International Congress on Eugenics. He also lobbied against the use of sign language and supported oral-only education, effectively silencing a community in the name of progress. While he never called for sterilization, his ideas helped lay the groundwork for decades of discrimination. He connected billions of people across the globe, but wanted to control who got to speak in the first place. Gear, 4. Nikola Tesla, the brilliant mind who slipped into madness. He was a visionary. The true father of modern electricity. A genius who dreamed of free wireless energy for all. But behind the brilliance of Nikola Tesla was a man slowly consumed by obsession, paranoia, and isolation. In his early years, Tesla dazzled the world with inventions like the Tesla coil, radio, remote control, and alternating current. But over time, his ideas grew more fantastical and less grounded. He claimed to be in contact with beings from other planets. He spoke of a death ray that could end all war. And he believed he could split the earth with the right frequency. Tesla became obsessed with the number 3, refusing to stay in hotel rooms that weren't divisible by it. He avoided touching people. He refused to speak to women who wore pearls. And he developed an unhealthy attachment to a pigeon he fed daily in New York City, claiming he loved that bird as a man loves a woman. In the end, Tesla died alone and in debt. His hotel room was raided by government agents, and many of his notes were confiscated and never seen again. A man who lit up the world, and was eventually swallowed by his own darkness. Rocket 5. Wernher von Braun, the rocket scientist with a Nazi past, is remembered as the father of modern rocketry. The man who helped put a man on the moon. A hero of NASA and the American space program. But Wernher von Braun's journey to the stars began in a far darker place. Before he worked for the United States, von Braun was a leading engineer in Nazi Germany. He developed the V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range ballistic missile. It was a technological marvel, and a weapon of terror. V-2 rockets were launched against civilian targets in London and other European cities, killing thousands. Even worse, these rockets were built using slave labor from concentration camps like Mittelbau-Dora, where tens of thousands died in horrific conditions. Von Braun claimed he was only focused on the science. But documents and testimonies reveal he visited the camps and knew exactly how his rockets were being built. After the war, he was brought to the US under Operation Paperclip, a secret program that gave former Nazi scientists a clean slate in exchange for their expertise. He helped launch America's space program. But his legacy is forever tethered to the shadows of the past. Bomb 6. Alfred Nobel, the man who built a fortune on explosives today, his name is associated with peace. The Nobel Prize is one of the world's highest honors. But Alfred Nobel's wealth, and his legacy, began with something far more destructive. He was a brilliant chemist and inventor. In 1867, he patented dynamite, a powerful and portable explosive. It revolutionized construction, mining, and warfare. Soon, Nobel's inventions were used not just to build, but to kill. His factories produced munitions across Europe. And as his fortune grew, so did public criticism. One French newspaper even published a mistaken obituary titled, "The Merchant of Death is Dead," condemning Nobel for profiting from violence. The headline shocked him. It forced him to consider how he would be remembered. So Nobel did something few people ever get to do: he rewrote his legacy. In his will, he left most of his fortune to establish the Nobel Prizes awards for physics, chemistry, literature, and peace. But can good deeds erase a bloody fortune? Or was the prize always a form of atonement? A man who invented death, and then tried to reward life. Mobile phone 7. Steve Jobs, the visionary who denied his own daughter he changed the way we live. He put computers in our pockets. He became a tech icon, the face of Apple, innovation, and design. But Steve Jobs wasn't just a genius. He was also a deeply flawed human being. In the early days of Apple, Jobs had a daughter, Lisa, with his longtime partner, Prasanth Brennan. But for years, he denied being her father, even as he became a millionaire and a global figure. He claimed he was sterile, and even forced Prasanth to raise their child on welfare, while he lived in luxury. Ironically, during this same period, Jobs was developing a computer named Lisa. Even when a DNA test confirmed his paternity, Jobs remained emotionally distant and dismissive for years. Lisa later described their relationship as painful and inconsistent, filled with silence, cruelty, and control. Jobs eventually acknowledged her, but many say it was too little, too late. He inspired millions to think different. But when it came to his own child, he failed to be present. A man who changed the world but struggled to change himself. Candle 8. Benjamin Franklin, the founding father with skeletons beneath his fore, he's hailed as a founding father of the United States. A diplomat, inventor, philosopher, and writer. But Benjamin Franklin had a secret hidden beneath his London home, and it wasn't political. In 1998, while renovating his former residence at 36 Craven Street, workers discovered a chilling surprise: over 1,200 human bones buried in the basement. The remains belonged to at least 10 bodies, including 6 children. All dated to the time Franklin lived in the house. Was the great statesman a killer? Probably not. Historians believe the bones were tied to anatomical research conducted by Franklin's friend, Dr. William Hewson, a pioneering surgeon who likely ran a secret medical school out of the house. At the time, it was illegal to dissect corpses, so many were stolen from graves or unclaimed from prisons. Still, the idea that one of history's most celebrated minds lived above a hidden morgue is haunting. A man who wrote about liberty and life, while death rested beneath his feet. DNA 9. James Watson, the DNA pioneer who believed in genetic superiority, he co-discovered the structure of DNA. He won a Nobel Prize. He helped unlock the very code of life. But James Watson, one of the most celebrated scientists of the 20th century, would later become infamous. Not for what he discovered, but for what he believed. Over the years, Watson made repeated claims suggesting that intelligence is linked to race. In interviews and public talks, he argued that people of African descent were inherently less intelligent than others, statements widely condemned by the global scientific community. He also made disparaging remarks about women in science, suggested that obesity is a sign of poor character, and questioned the ethics of allowing certain people to reproduce. His own colleagues distanced themselves. Institutions stripped him of honorary titles. And even the lab he helped build, Cold Spring Harbor, severed all ties. Watson claimed he was misunderstood. But the damage was done. The man who helped explain the blueprint of humanity forgot the responsibility that comes with knowing how we're built. Biohazard 10. Fritz Haber, the chemist who fed the world and poisoned it, he made the soil bloom and the battlefield burn. Fritz Haber, a German chemist, developed the Haber-Bosch process, a method for synthesizing ammonia from nitrogen in the air. It was a breakthrough that made artificial fertilizers possible. Thanks to Haber's invention, billions of people could be fed. Global agriculture was transformed. He's credited with saving more lives than almost any other scientist in history. But Haber's genius had a darker side. During World War I, he turned his talents toward warfare, developing chlorine gas as a chemical weapon. His innovations led to some of the first large-scale gas attacks in modern history, choking soldiers in the trenches of Europe. He proudly defended his role in the war. But his own wife, also a chemist, was horrified. She took her own life shortly after one of his first battlefield deployments. Haber's legacy is a contradiction: he helped feed the world and helped poison it. A man who showed us that the same science can create life or take it away. When greatness has a price, we remember them as legends, as heroes, as the minds who shaped our modern world. But history has a habit of polishing genius while hiding the cracks beneath it. These inventors changed how we live, work, and connect. But they were also complicated, flawed, sometimes even dangerous. And maybe that's the real lesson: flawed, brilliant, and forever unfinished. Cheering megaphone, call to action, speak to the viewer, speech bubble. Which story surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We feature the best ones in upcoming videos. Thumbs up, like this video if it made you see history a little differently. Bell, subscribe to Lesson Lost for weekly deep dives into the truths that textbooks left behind. Because sometimes it's not what they invented but what they hid.